Imagine a place that can sustain itself fishing forever. Imagine 150 miles of Maine coastline, 50 fishing communities, where fishermen and community members care for the rivers and coves and the mud and the seaweed, and beyond that, the fish and the habitat on the bottom of the ocean they can't even see. Imagine a healthy, resilient economy that is based on healthy fisheries. And over time, that both the economy and the fishermen continually adapt to an ever-changing climate and marine system, changing what is caught and sold, working within its bounds. Imagine producing high-quality marine food for the world at a fair price for the long term. Right now, in eastern Maine, this vision could become a reality in the next 10 to 20 years. Of course, it could happen anytime, anywhere, but we don't have much of a track record. As the saying goes, we've declared war on fish and won. But there are some events coming together to make this possible. New science, several major marine and conservation initiatives, and an early promising process that is supporting fishermen to speak for the future. We need to have the vision and the smarts and the courage to make it happen. All of this insights that brought me here today started with a clam digger in Deer Isle. I was 21, interviewing him for an article on clam laws. He was a clammer in his 60s, and he was mad because nobody would listen to him about his ideas for protecting clams. As I listened to him, I heard things that Herb knew about mud, about where on the flats the clams grew fast or slow, and where the spat, the little clams, settled and what made them survive or not. He knew things I never knew that there were to be known. And he perceived things that I couldn't see as I looked out over that flat on that one low tide. And he cared. His knowledge and passion, this 21-year-old thought it was a pretty good place to start caring for the greatest manufacturing machine she'd ever been exposed to. Every single year in the Gulf of Maine, currents and sunlight and marine plankton combine and create resources for us to catch, seemingly something out of nothing. But unfortunately, neither that knowledge nor passion has had an outlet. The result, the fishermen and the regulators and the scientists are locked in a legacy of dysfunction, ocean depletion, ocean degradation and depletion, alienation and frustration for fishermen, and hopelessness all around. What's been missing? It's Herb's knowledge and passion put into action. Eastern Maine is where the pieces are coming together. 150 miles of coast, land, river, ocean, all interconnected, bounded on the west by the Great Penobscot River and on the east by the St. Croix, in between the famous Downy salmon rivers. Offshore, you have the coastal shelf, that shallow area within 25 miles of the coast where all of our marine resources reproduce and grow. Eastern Maine is an area with abundant lobsters. But, and I think some people may not be aware of this, the cod and the haddock and flounders collapsed over 20 years ago and they have not rebuilt. Everyone's concerned about the fragility that this lack of diversity is causing. Lobsters, lobsters, and more lobsters. But where are those groundfish that are so important to the ocean and the economy? Well, there are things that are coming together to create the opportunity I'm talking about. Start with the coastal shelf. The coastal shelf from Penobscot Bay to Canada has recently been described as unique ecologically. And this may seem insignificant, but it's actually liberating. What it means is no more one-size-fits-all management from Canada all the way down to Cape Cod. And we have a chance to put it into action because federal managers are starting to shift toward managing by area rather than just by species. This is a huge, huge change. And it's a learning moment because no one really knows what it means to do ecosystem management. This change will make fishermen's knowledge have new standing. Remember that complexity that Herb saw on that one clam flat? It is impossible to manage that level of complexity solely from Augusta or Washington. Fishermen's knowledge, their observations, and yes, their responsibility will have new value and relevance. But there's another thing, and it gets better. This area is about to experience a cataclysmic positive ecological event. This year, dams will be coming down in the Penobscot River, and for the first time since the 1840s, 1,000 miles of river and lake habitat will be open to sea-run fish. Those are the fish like alewives or salmon that spawn in the freshwater and live in the ocean. The river is going to come alive. This river news is important because of the linkage between river health and ocean health. The rebounding river fish should drive a major marine restoration. So, back to Herb the clam digger. If these things happen and we don't enlist fishermen's knowledge and passion, they will not catapult us to a new and lasting fisheries economy. But how? I will tell you that mistrust and fishermen's pervasive sense of futility is the greatest obstacle we have. And we've thought deeply about this and have been developing a process to support fishermen in building the hope and the skills it takes to speak for the long term. We call it Community Fisheries Action Roundtable, CFAR for short. So how do you start, someone asked me. We start by listening, and we write it all down. And when we meet again, we share what's on that butcher paper from the last time and start there. After so many years of frustration, there is a lot of angst to be vented. We start by focusing on improving resources and finding solutions. When it's all a zero-sum game, it's really hard to have hope. And we talk about access, because if a fisherman or his grandchildren have no hope of getting the rights to fish, why care about the resources? We're really conscious about creating a safe space. It takes courage for fishermen to participate, because sharing your knowledge about fish behavior amounts to sharing your competitive edge. And if you speak up, other fishermen can be angry, and that can really be dangerous if you have $50,000 or $100,000 worth of lobster gear sitting unattended offshore. We eat together. We avoid the standard meeting setup because for many people that conjures up the feelings of failure left over from school. We ask questions about what's important about your fishery or your community, and we write it all down. These questions are matters of huge emotional impact to the fishermen. And what happens is what they say and gets on that paper become values that then can be turned into principles that we can, formal or informal, that we can touch back to as we have to confront difficult discussions about rules. Fishermen meet with regulators and scientists, and we go along as guides, the dreaded government becomes either, takes form, you know, you see federal, state, legislature, agency. Science gradually morphs into, away from being the club to beat fishermen with, and into something about asking questions and testing questions. Very familiar to fishermen because that's what they do every day. As it goes along, we take questions and provide perspective and support because it's such a different world ashore than it is fishing. When you're fishing, it's clear-cut, the hunt is engaging, the hierarchies are clear between captain and crew, and the rewards are immediate and tangible. As the fishermen say, the worst day on the water is better than the best day on land. And we're there for the long haul. It's a daunting responsibility. Because hope, which is what fishermen tell us that we are giving them, is really very fragile when you're not accustomed to the long collective process of back and forth ashore. And so I have hope that in the next 10 to 20 years, we can indeed build a new and lasting fishing economy in eastern Maine. The external situation is set. We have this glimmer of hope, this emerging trust. And I don't think there's a better place in the developed world where there's more chance to build a 21st century fishing economy that this planet needs. Thank you.